Going into last year, I'm willing to bet that nobody saw Anthony Edwards turning into one of the best three-point shooters in the NBA, where there was just one guy who attempted and made more outside looks than he did. One would think that Ant's massively improved outside shooting, combined with his superhuman slashing game, would be enough by itself to make him unguardable. But while Ant has been an exciting talent, it also feels like there's been a pretty clear ceiling on his game, where in back-to-back years the T-Wolves have been eliminated in the conference finals, and both series were relatively uncompetitive. 2 years back against Dallas, Minnesota would get sent home in 5 games, and over that stretch the Wolves got outscored by 32 points with Ant on the court. Then jumping ahead to the following year, it's pretty much the same story, where the T-Wolves again got sent home in 5 games, and despite having some good moments, I thought it was another underwhelming series for Edwards, where he got held to under 20 points in 3 out of the 5 games. Now obviously the deeper anybody gets into the playoffs, the stiffer the competition is going to be, but at the same time, I do think there's multiple things Ant could get better at. But before we dive into that, I want to briefly go over what his current strengths are. First, while he has taken a massive leap as a three-point shooter, I still think Ant easily does his best work playing downhill. Off the bounce, because Ant is both really quick and strong, he can keep everything pretty straightforward off the dribble, where he just reads where the open space is, to then put his foot on the gas and charge towards the paint. He's initially playing one-on-one against Isaiah Joe, but as OKC sends a double from the middle of the floor, watch him just attack away, and that speed is enough to turn the corner and cut back towards the basket. With the ball, Ant thrives off of momentum. If there's space between him and the defense, he's going to use that to charge up and teleport towards the rim. But then along with these explosive straight line drives, Edwards also has the ball skills and control to sharply change direction. And he's really good at using his pace to set up these moves. Look how relaxed and upright he is as he comes off the screen. Then he's going to quickly drop his stance and bring the ball between, knifing through these 2 defenders. The pace on this move is also really good, where he first looks to explode towards his left, but when Ihart digs down in gap, look how Ant's going to briefly pull the ball out, which moves the help defense off their spot and clears up the lane to attack. Now while attacking downhill, Edwards can also cover a ridiculous amount of ground with the ball, and this makes it easier for him to knife through gaps and traffic. He's pushing the ball here in semi-transition, and he's going to pound it and drop his shoulders, selling the blow-by to his right. But then from behind the 3, he's going to hit this low pickup and cut back to his left. And after picking up off his left foot, Ant can extend all the way to the rim with just 2 steps. Simply put, there's not many players across the league who can hit this move from 25 feet out. And those strides and pickups also allow Ant to maneuver past rotating defenders. Watch him here jab and rip towards the baseline, but then as Alex Caruso shifts up, Ant can just pick up and slide right past him. And all those tools from Ant's strength, explosiveness, and footwork carry over to his finishing in the deep paint. He can elevate up and draw buckets and fouls, use that footwork to decelerate and maneuver around the defense, or he can drift out and use his touch on different floaters and push shots. So again, when it comes to breaking down the defense, maneuvering through traffic, and generating points at the rim, I think Ant literally checks all the boxes. And that downhill scoring naturally feeds into his outside shooting, where because the defense is so paranoid about that blow-by threat, it's pretty easy for Edwards to push the defense back off the dribble with these routine stepbacks. And out of pick and roll, if Ant feels any kind of space when he comes off, he has no problem elevating going both right and left. And it's really impressive how smooth his jumper has gone over the years, where there's just no wasted movement from him getting his feet set, getting the ball to his left point, and elevating in one fluid motion. And because Ant's a righty, it should be much harder for him to pull up going to his strong hand. First, because you have to pick up and get that hand behind the ball. And second, the footwork can also be pretty awkward. Look how he's going to take a dribble to his right, to then again pick up for his jumper. But look how that right foot is just a little bit too far back. But to compensate, watch Ant turn his hips as he elevates, getting himself perfectly angled to the rim. So that ability to quickly pull up going both right and left, plus create separation in isolation, has been enough by itself for Ant to get off over 10 threes per game. Now having said that, I do think there are moments where Ant gets a little bit too trigger happy with these pull-ups. there's times where he pulls a mismatch up towards the perimeter and elects to crank up a contested 3 as opposed to putting pressure on the rim. Right here, Chet Holmgren is picking him up well beyond the arc. And from this spot, Ant should be hitting the turbo button and blowing right past him. But even with him settling for more outside jumpers, I really don't mind it if he's shooting around 40% from 3. Sure, his volume at the rim was down last year, but again, I don't think it's a problem if his numbers are this high. So as an overall score, Ant's elite when he's playing downhill and finishing around the basket, plus he's turned himself into a top tier 3-point shooter. So when looking at what exactly he has to get better at, this is when many people would point to his mid-range game. Last year in the playoffs, just 20% of Ant's total jump shots were off the dribble 2s. And while that volume is pretty low, I really don't see a reason for him to be shooting more of these. Because simply put, if Ant's taking more in-between jumpers, that means he's taking less 3s or shots around the basket, which he's already doing at an extremely high level. So sure, Ant could double down on his mid-range game, but you're then going to lose a big chunk of that 3-point volume and him playing aggressive and putting pressure on the rim. And at that point, I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze. And when looking at his build, I'm not sure if Edwards has the makeup to be a high volume mid-range scorer. He's 6'4" and initiates pretty much all of his offense from outside the 3. And the thing is, I already think Edwards has a pretty good in-between game. Again, these aren't looks that he gets into a ton, but these are still good shots for him to have in his back pocket. First, if he beats his initial man on the perimeter and feels the defense collapsing down towards the paint, he is pretty good at using his body and finding these windows to bump and pull up. Look how he's going to use his body to put Case and Wallace in jail. And then when he feels the Thunder's defense collapsing in, he's just going to stop and pop out for a step back. And similar to what we saw with his 3-point shooting, Ant's very good at leveraging that downhill threat to create space. OKC here is just going to switch the screen and watch Edwards first transfer the ball between, hesitate, to then take one hard dribble to his right. And when he feels J-Dub's hips completely open up, he's then going to stop on a dime by sliding the ball behind. This is another really good shot here, where he's just going to explode off this pick to his right. And again, once he feels the defense collapsing down, he's just going to stop and pop up for this routine left-right jumper. So when it comes to Ant's mid-range scoring, I think this is all he really needs. The foundation of his game, I think, should always be him playing aggressive and living in the paint, plus punishing the defense with pull-up 3s when he has space. And of course, there are spots where he can counter and sprinkle in some in-between pull-ups, but I already think he's taking plenty. And this year, him drastically getting better in the mid-range won't really do much for his game. So when it comes to what Anthony Edwards actually has to get better at, I think everything starts and ends with his passing. While he has gotten better over the past few years, I still don't think Edwards is a top-tier playmaker in the league. And I hear many people give the excuse, quote, that Ant's just a traditional 2-guard, and his role should be to just score. While score-first wings and 2 guards was a thing about a decade ago, that archetype of a player has slowly been dying off. And in order for Edwards to truly reach his full potential, he's going to have to become at least an above average passer. And when looking at all the best players across the league who are guards and wings, guys like SGA, Luka, or Cade Cunningham, all of them are at least good passers. And Ant's ability to both read the floor and the defense is what's handicapped his game over the past few years. Now to start off with the positives, I do think Ant has some good elements as a playmaker. First, because he puts so much pressure on the rim, it's pretty common for him to collapse the defense and create these routine spray out 3s. And because he has really good footwork in the paint, that also allows him to create some different passing angles in traffic. He's going to Euro past Caruso rotating up, to then find the shooter in the opposite corner. While playing in crowds, Ant also reads his teammates on the perimeter pretty well. Look how Alexander Walker here is going to shift up towards the top of the key, and Ant is able to find him by wrapping this pass all the way behind him. When playing downhill, Ant's also gotten much better at reading the second side of the floor, where if he pulls the weak side help across, he has no problem snapping these cross-court skip passes. And then because of that improved off-the-dribble shooting, he now pulls much more aggressive coverages out of pick and roll, where the defense is either hard hedging or blitzing him. And from these spots, he is pretty good at finding the open man and putting the defense in a scramble. So while Ant does check a lot of boxes as a passer, I also feel like he should be crediting more for how much gravity he pulls. Again, with the ball, he's easily one of the best scorers across the league, but the amount of advantages that he creates for his teammates is pretty underwhelming throughout the course of the game. First, when Ant gets a switch out in open space, he does calmly play with tunnel vision, and even if he draws 2 or 3 defenders towards the ball, he typically looks to force something through traffic. When he attacks towards the elbow here, he literally has 2 defenders on him, but he still looks to pick up through to then do a really bad Kareem impression. And when Ant does look to pass in isolation, it's typically far too late, or his deliveries are way off the mark. Look how he tries to shovel this inside hand pocket pass through this double team, which bounces off this defender's hip. Now on this play, the Wolves wave Mike Conley through, but notice how Lu Dort ignores him and stays shifted up. But instead of reading the floor, Ant just puts his head down and dribbles right into that space. And when he turns his back to set up the spin, Dort can easily time him and jump on the ball. One thing I would love to see Ant do more of is give up the ball early. This read here is perfect. Where off the catch, he sees J-Dub shifted over in gap, so he just sprays it across to Randall, which puts the defense in a scramble and leads to an open look. So whether he's playing out of pick and roll or isolation, Ant needs to simultaneously be both a passing and scoring threat. It can't just be one or the other. With the ball, it's pretty easy to tell when he goes from scoring mode to passing mode. For example, Ant oftentimes doesn't look to pass until after he's picked up his dribble. And this may seem like a small detail, but these extra split seconds it takes for him to gather, to then look to pass, gives the defense plenty of time to rotate. And sure, at times, the right read for him does open up, but more often than not, the result typically isn't very good. We'll see him here working off this Gobert screen, but as he works down towards the teeth of the defense, look how he again picks up his dribble, and the help defense rotates back out. So Ant from here has no advantage, and he has to force up this tough in-between push shot. So again, while Ant can generally make the right pass, I still don't think he's maximizing the amount of attention he's getting from the defense. And honestly, I think it's mostly a mindset thing. It feels like Edwards either plays with the mentality of I'm going to go out and score 40 points, or I'm going to go out and try to get 15 assists. In reality, the game should dictate what he does. For him, I think it comes down to him playing aggressive, making reads, and feeling what the defense is doing, as opposed to having your mind made up before each game or play. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments who the kids should break down next. The kids here.